I start tonight with an exclusive report showing you again an explicit example of ABC bias and deception. It comes as the Director General of the BBC and the BBC's news boss have both resigned in the wake of the latest example of political bias at the UK's taxpayer-funded broadcaster. And incredibly, my latest example of ABC bias comes from an almost identical act of deception involving editing of the very same Donald Trump speech and presented in the same way to fit him up for the January the 6th Capitol Hill riot in Washington in 2021. But what I will also show you is a contrast in accountability. Despite repeated examples of bias and manipulation at the ABC, the news boss, Justin Stevens, just got a $110,000 pay rise. But at the BBC, there has been accountability. It might have taken a series of breaches over a long period, but eventually a price has been paid.
Hello, good evening. Tim Davie has tonight resigned as Director General of the BBC, along with the CEO of BBC News, Deborah Turness, after a week of criticism of BBC News coverage and allegations of editorial mistakes. In a statement to staff, Tim Davie said there have been some mistakes made, and as Director General, I have to take ultimate responsibility.
The story that brought this to a head was the revelation last week about how the BBC's Panorama program had edited US President Donald Trump's January the 6th speech to suggest he was encouraging the violence that followed. Have a look at the BBC edit and then Trump uncut and in context.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Yeah, that is clear and shocking, and we all know the game they were playing. And I've got to say I was hardly surprised. As you know, I keep an eye on leftist media, lots of it taxpayer-funded. And I notice this sort of deceitful editing and coverage all the time, and I share it with you. In Britain, this Trump example followed a series of other errors or cases of bias, including the BBC using the son of a Hamas official as a narrator in a program about the Gaza war. So this latest scandal proved too much for the leadership to withstand.
He's had an incredible amount of pressure over the Panorama documentary and how President Trump was edited in that documentary itself. It was an impossible sort of situation for him to not have resigned over this, really. The way that President Trump was edited throughout the week, people have been saying that it was inexcusable, really, how Panorama portrayed President Trump and the rally that he had talking about January the 6th before supporters stormed the Capitol.
OK, so that's the story so far. But let me take you to an ABC Four Corners report from February 2021, just a month after the Capitol Hill riot.
Such is the level of fear that in recent weeks, serious people here have been using the dread phrase civil war. If there's one thing that President Trump demonstrated in his final terrifying days in office, it's that these divided states remain vulnerable to an unscrupulous demagogue. Tonight, how a defeated, disgraced, and now twice impeached president brought US democracy to the brink of destruction.
Hardly very subtle. And of course, Trump deserves criticism for refusing to accept the election verdict. I've certainly called that out and still do. But that doesn't give you the right to change the facts, to manipulate reality. As you saw, it was called Downfall, and it was reported by Sarah Ferguson. And I want to show you one crucial minute of this program. It includes a part of the same speech as the BBC got into strife over, and the whole narrative here too was to insinuate blame onto Trump for the riots.
From his bully pulpit in the Ellipse, Trump continued to pressure his vice president.
And we're going to have to fight much harder. And Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us. And if he doesn't, that will be a sad day for our country, because you're sworn to uphold our Constitution. Now it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
Before the president finished speaking, members of a gang notorious for political violence had gathered close to the Capitol.
The intent is pretty clear there, isn't it? They didn't use the words fight, but it was about Trump saying we're going to go down there and show strength and be strong. And then the riots. So let me show you the editing of Trump's speech.
And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you.
Let's stop it there. They cut to the crowd shot there. That's known as a cutaway shot or overlay. When you show something else other than the speaker, you can then cut to a different part of the speech without seeing a jump. There's nothing wrong with that. It's done all the time, but it needs to be honest and fair. Let me show you what Trump actually said.
And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
Just like the BBC, they cut out what he said after he said he was going down there. They cut out the stuff about going down and cheering senators. Just like the BBC, the ABC cut that out, presumably because that doesn't suggest aggression or violence. They cut out the bit where Trump encourages people to cheer on who they see as the good guys. And here it is again, how the ABC aired it after their editing.
And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
So there you have it. Our ABC has committed the same journalistic sin as the BBC. They have clipped up the speech to suit their narrative rather than reality and the true meaning of what Donald Trump was saying that day. Notably, of course, there is another bit they did not show. Some of you might never have seen this because most of the media has just refused to show this crucial part of the speech.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Anyway, I have asked the ABC to examine this edit and whether they admit it's misleading. I've also asked who was responsible and whether they will investigate and apologise for it, and I haven't heard back yet. We'll stay on the case and keep you posted. But this, of course, is far from an isolated incident for the ABC either. They've been antagonistic towards Trump from the outset and even commissioned a 3-part series by the same journalist, Sarah Ferguson, a series they called the Story of the Century, no less, that actually tried to prove up the ridiculous conspiracy theory that Trump was actually installed by Russia's Vladimir Putin.
Hello and welcome to Four Corners. Tonight we begin our special 3-part investigation into the story of the century, the election of US President Donald Trump and his ties to Russia. The Kremlin's puppet master now has America dancing to his discordant tune. He couldn't have planned it better.
Yeah, years later, with this conspiracy theory completely debunked by numerous investigations and authorities, the ABC still hosts those 3 episodes online and has never corrected or clarified or apologised over it. It is the crock of the century. There's plenty more too, and more recently, of course. The ABC had to pay out almost $400,000 last year after it was caught out manipulating footage and adding additional gunshots to try to fit up our soldiers as war criminals.
Revealing an astonishing difference between the source vision and the version of events told by the ABC's Mark Willesee, which starts with 6 rounds of firing. Then, the single warning shot becomes 6.
For me, it appears some of these figures are
They've literally added extra gunshots.
And just weeks ago, I showed you how the ABC managing director couldn't say why the ABC failed to report cases of Hamas executing Gazans back before the Middle East peace deal was struck.
The particular story you refer to in terms of Mr Kenny, I'm not aware of that particular story. I'm not aware of the decision that was made to cover or not cover that particular issue.
And when I showed you how the ABC's Middle East correspondent refused to answer reasonable questions, it triggered a long and insulting letter to my employers from the ABC News boss, Justin Stevens, demanding some sort of apology from me. Really, the ABC can't justify its own biased journalism, and Stevens reckons I'm the problem for daring to tell people about it. Now, this goes to my point about accountability. I've just shown you that clear example of tricky editing to fit up Donald Trump for January the 6th. And I've barely scratched the surface recounting other examples of ABC bias. But far from seeing any corrections, apologies or accountability at the taxpayer-funded broadcaster, what we've seen is Stevens, the ABC News boss, get a pay rise, a $110,000 pay rise to almost $700,000 a year. Misinformation and political bias in the media is a terrible problem right now. I would say worse than ever because of the polarised digital media landscape we live in. But when taxpayers are forced to pay for it, when you and I pay taxes every year and we are forced to fund more than $1 billion a year for this stuff, in fact, we spend $1.5 billion when you include SBS, well, then, of course, the public broadcasting needs to be objective. It needs to be fair. And its leadership needs to be transparent and accountable. And there's precious little sign of any of that at the ABC right now. They spend taxpayers' dollars making deceitful cuts to videotape to mislead people about what the US president says. Yet they refuse to front up and answer to taxpayers about their own conduct and deceptions. This must change. And at least one politician is pushing for such a change.
I'm a strong advocate for a rewrite of the ABC Act to hold the ABC to account, because I don't think the current legislation governing the ABC is fit for purpose.
All power to Sarah Henderson, a former ABC journalist, by the way, as I am. The Coalition ought to take this up. They'll get slammed for it, of course, but the relentless green left bias of the ABC simply has to be tackled, for the sake of taxpayers' money not being abused and for the sake of our democracy. Now, hot off the presses, I've just been handed a statement that we've been sent from the ABC in response to those questions and that case I just highlighted for you. Four Corners program, The Capitol Riot, examined the events of the 6th of January 2021 in detail, they say. And they say the quote in question from President Trump was used accurately by the ABC. They didn't change the meaning of that section of the speech, and it did not mislead the audience. The program was consistent with the ABC's high standards of factual, accurate and impartial storytelling, they say, and they stand with Sarah Ferguson's outstanding journalism. There you go. Nothing to see here. You can go back, you can rewind this story. I showed you what Donald Trump said. I showed you what the ABC cut out. They cut out the same bit that the BBC cut out, and they then went to him saying to go down there and be strong and show strength and take them on, right? You make up your own mind. That's the ABC whitewashing this thing already when they have committed the same sin that cost 2 leaders their jobs at the BBC.